Okay, here we go. Oh. Good afternoon. Patriots behind 14-10, not that we're concerned about it. Their head. The official slogan of the Antrim Historical Society is "In Brady We Trust."
They just made another touchdown.
Oh, really?
I'll take it.
I'm taping it. First of all, an apology. Under my regime, we were supposed to have an annual meeting at this session. And I know there are a lot of groupies who come to Antrim Historical Society meetings just to go through the annual meeting procedure. So I promise in November we will do the annual meeting, which is breathtaking. It is riveting.
I want you to know that Stephen has a BS degree.
Yeah. Summa cum laude.
And the PhD, which is higher and deeper.
Yeah. This is true. Now, upcoming events. Sunday, November 20th, Wayno. Perhaps some of you have heard of him. We'll talk about his business enterprises over the years. Should be very interesting, knowing how lively Wayno is. On Sunday, December 18th, instead of going Christmas shopping, we are going to have retired public officials, politicians come and talk. 2 Allens are coming. Mary served on the school board, and Gordon served in the state house. And I am after Bob Flanders, who's not feeling well for the last time.
He's in the hospital.
Yeah, and I'm after Bob Odell, who's the former state senator who has disappeared. Someone, if anybody has his phone number, in all seriousness, I would very much like to have this. This afternoon, we're going to hear from the Tenneys. The Tenneys are one of Antrim's first families, and astonishingly, I look out in the audience, and every one of you is also from one of Antrim's first families. So this is exciting. The Tenneys have made contributions in the business realm, in the governmental realm, in the educational realm, and I'm looking at Linda in particular, in the historical realm. Eric is an accomplished local historian. He is. Don't. I'll tell the truth. He'll do false modesty over there. When Bill Prokop was the town administrator, a survey was done about about the most favored commercial enterprises in Antrim, and I bet you can guess which were the 2 that were chosen. Edmonds and the Tenney Farm. So this is a central institution, and I asked Eric and Krista to talk about the Tenney farming tradition. Eric was asked earlier about whether he was giving out any autographs, and apparently today is the last day that you will give out autographs. So
You got the heart really safe.
we have Eric, and if Krista's going to say anything also, welcome Tenneys.
Okay, this is an outline Stephen gave me, all right? I'll follow Stephen's outline. Do you know much about your grandparents' lives before your parents? The answer is no, because they were both dead. My family came here in 1815, okay, from Temple. That grandfather, no, triple great, he made it through 5 years in Antrim. Now, their farm was a rock hole of the heaven up on Old Pound Road. The cellar hole for the house is still there. You just go up Old Pound Road and you get where it branches. You get down to the doctor's place there, or you get several places there. You just keep bearing left. You get down 2 inclines, there's a cellar hole on the right. There's a house right near it. They own the cellar hole. That's where the family came from. They didn't start the farm, they bought it from somebody. Okay? But I remember as a kid going up there, we owned the Whole Hill at that time, and this land abutted Whole Hill. And the rocks are bigger than this church up there, so I understand how the Tenneys got off that farm. Okay? But they stayed there until the middle 1880s. And then my great-grandfather bought what's now the Weber homestead up on West Street.
Oh.
Okay? And that's where my father and my uncle were born. Okay? And that was probably the next rockiest rock hole in it. It was better than what they had. And my grandfather used to boil sap, cut wood, milk some cows, whatever. That's how you did it in those days, any farm, not just ours or his. And so they lasted until my grandfather passed away. And my father and my uncle, having grown up there, decided that place was for sale. I'll tell you a quick story. Right after he died, Elmer Merrill, who was Arthur Merrill's grandfather, was the neighbor down the road, and he was milking the cows for him just temporarily. Well, my uncle in Peterborough got a phone call. Forrest. He said, I've been milking your cows the last 3 days. And the guy you hired hadn't been showing up. Well, needless to say, the cattle dealer showed up the day after, and that was the end of the dairy operation up on West Street. Okay? And it got sold, I'm not sure it was during World War II or at the end of World War II in the mid-40s. And my family was out of there. And the Webbers bought it back in the late 50s. So they've lived there almost as long as my family did.
Yeah.
Now I'll give you the coincidence. That was Farm 2. Now we're going to Farm 3. And I was born down in Massachusetts, so I'm not a native. Okay? Technically. And my father was a farm manager, well, herdsman at Mount Herman School during World War II, and that's where I was born. And like all of the private schools in those days, you didn't make a lot of money. They gave you your housing and all this. Well, that lasted a couple of years after the war, and then he went looking for a job. And believe it or not, he ended up in Francistown. He was farm manager for a millionaire, which is the old Hobnob Farm on Mountain Road in Francistown. It's still, most of it's still there, but it's all split up now. And then we stayed there until 1954. And then Mr. Winslow, who was the millionaire, decided, well, it's time for me to start shutting down. His wife had strokes, and he had the whole place for her benefit because she liked horses and whatever. So my father said, that's it, I'm going to business myself. So he went, prior to Mount Herman, he'd worked up in Vermont in the Champlain Valley, which was a whole lot of farms. So he went up there looking, but finally he and Winslow got together, and Winslow, why don't you buy the Antrim farm? Well, guess what? It was my father's hometown. It was all coincidence how he ended up back here again. And I've got this picture here. Which foot? Over here. Well, it's a picture of my own. It was? Oh, here it is. That's my father on the right, and that's my uncle. He was a veterinarian in Peterborough. The only reason I've got this is they were picking raspberries. Okay? But my father was bound and determined he was never going to buy another farm with a rock on it. But he knew this farm. There weren't rocks on it. So that was valid. Rocks were there were two things he wasn't going to do in life, I remember him telling me. He was going to pick peas or pick up rocks. And that's what they're picking raspberries. I just showed you the two of them. His name, for what it's worth, you'll see there on that milk card, it says BT at Benjamin Tenney. And what I've got to do now is just tell you a little bit of how agriculture changed on our farms, okay? I had a picture of this. This was my grandfather's. And that's what you used to do farming with 100 years ago. oxen. Okay, this hangs up in the stand. I just thought, I don't know if you've ever noticed it or not. But that's a true Tenney thing. But every other farmer in the world doing the same thing. It wasn't unique to Tenney's. And got that. And as time went on, railroads came in and they could ship their milk. So that's the old-fashioned 40-quart milk can. This is what took the milk to the cooler. You didn't milk into it, you poured the milk out of the cow into that, you could get 3 or 4 cows together, take it in, dump it in that thing. Okay? Now, when I was a boy, 10 years old down here at the farm, I remember doing just that. Only we didn't have that. At that point, we had stainless steel. Okay? But within a year or two after my father bought it, and he didn't have any money, the requirement came in, they went to what they call stainless steel bulk tanks. That ended the jug business. Okay? And when I remember 10 years old, milking cows and whatever, and, I'll tell you 2 quick stories that teach you a lot about animals. We had a cow named Tenney, and she was really tame for cows. She'd come up and put her head through your shoulder like that and scratch her, just like a dog. You don't see that very often in cows, believe me. And but there were 2 bad things. Good thing about Tenney and something I hated. The thing I hated was she was my father's pet. He would swap cows to get production, but not Tenney. She was sacred. And the problem is it took 15 minutes to milk her rather than 3 like all the other cows. But no, she was staying. Okay, Dad. There were the veto rights over that one. The good part of it was, I remember we used to feed the cows down in the old barnyard, which is down here on Depot Street. And the cows were out there eating one night, and a dog came downtown with hazing the cows in the barnyard. And I remember looking out the window, I said, Dad, you want me to go get the 22? Nope. Let's just watch and see what happens. Well, this dog was circling around the trailer and the cows, and Tenney was standing there chewing her cud, eating and chewing her cud. And she looked at the dog, and the dog came up to her, and she just took her head and picked him up and threw him right up in the air. And he landed on as you know what. The next stop was up street. He never came down there again. So Tenney had pluses and minuses. Okay, so all right, that's enough of the old farm. And I went away to school, whatever, and da-da-da-da-da. Remember when I graduated from college, my friend said, you need to work somewhere else for a while, just to make sure you want to come back here. I wanted to come back here. Well, U.S. Navy solved that problem during Vietnam. Okay? And the other thing is, getting down to why we're doing what we do today, is when I graduated from college, I remember agricultural economics said, the way things are going, if you want to update your farm and get the land and whatever for the future, you're going to need 60 cows per man. Okay? That was in 1965. Well, I went through Uncle Sam's thing. I remember my wife and I drove up from Florida on our way home. We were going to Buffalo to visit her parents. So we stopped in college. And I asked them, well, what's the ratio now? It's up to 120. That's how fast things were changing in the dairy business. And I says, well, we own about 60 tillable acres, and it takes 2 acres per cow on a rough thing to feed a cow for the whole winter, a year round. That's 30 cows. How do I get from there to 120 in Antrim? It ain't gonna happen. Not enough land around there. Okay, so the economics were just against small farms. As you see today, you read it in the newspaper. The dairy industry gradually, except maybe in the Connecticut Valley or the Merrimack, it's going to be history sooner or not too distant future. What is it, 10, 20 years ago they claimed they had 800 dairy farms, now they're down to 100. And it just, I remember coming down from the St. Lawrence in Utica, New York, seeing a farm, and I'll bet they had 2,000. They actually had an office building in the middle of the barns. It wasn't a home. You could tell by looking at it. It was an office building to run this place. But you're not going to do that in Antrim, New Hampshire. So we decided when I got out of the Navy, I came home, I told my dad, I milked cows when I was a kid, I milked cows even at Mount Herman. And I said, I'm not milking cows anymore. He says, I don't think I am either. That's when we switched and started growing vegetables, 1970. Okay? And it was just an economic thing. Either if you couldn't figure out in a small operation how to make any money at all, you had to go retail, and we weren't even big enough to make it in vegetables. We just don't have enough land. Okay? And Antrim doesn't have enough land, to be honest with you. Even if we could use every acre there is here to do it wholesale-wise. So we turned around and we started gradually working and on and on and on it went. And the first thing we had, I remember, I guess Ruthie, you said Ruthie that made that sign
Yeah,
for us.
she
She
did.
worked for us, and so did you work together with her? Or was she before you?
Before me, I think.
Maybe.
Not much.
Too old.
Could have been.
I used to like Ruth Brzozowski, because when she picked, she was short enough, she didn't have to bend over on a beam.
I'm still good at these. With the leaf.
But that's what, so you can see it in this picture, Bill. Oh, there it is. This is a clearer picture. Our first 8 years were in where we live now, in the barn, next to the stand. And then I remember I used to be eating lunch upstairs, and I heard the brakes squealing out front, and I said, I think we better put a stand somewhere else and have a parking lot, rather than backing into 202 all the time. And that's in '78 when we built the stand. We've added to it a couple of times, but the core stand was built in '78. And I think I may turn it over to you-know-who in the back. I got it up to current.
Well, 70.
78.
I gotta tell you a story about my daughter and her friend. We had the barnyard again, full of tomatoes one year, and they had green armyworm, green worms. And I remember I had, when she was young, I had them picking them off, put them in a pile. Then Jessica got right up and stomped right in them. I mean, it was a big pile about this deep. Come on, Krista.
It was great.
Hard to follow that.
Yeah, 78, I was only 5, because I was born in 73.
Baby snatch, Krista.
Yes, I probably was with you sometimes too. Yeah, we came, I grew up, I always wanted animals. So we did have beef cattle growing up. The understanding with my dad was if we have beef cattle, you can't like them. You can't love them because they're gonna have to go bye-bye.
Upstate.
Well, that didn't work out very well for me. So we did the same thing with sheep, and everybody ended up having to stay for the most part because I loved everybody, and whoever came to the farm had to stay.
We had pigs.
We had everything. The only thing we didn't have was goats because they're a pain in the neck. So we didn't have goats, but so we had lots of animals go through. Yeah, I had one cow. You spoke of Tammy. I had one named Sam, who I just adored. She was my.
It was Tammy's daughter.
That's probably why. There you go. She was a brat. She was the biggest brat, but I just loved her to death. Brian Brown had one of her bulls
He helped me deliver out in the pasture one night.
with chains. He wouldn't come out, so we were all out there all night long pulling her
And
out.
the police chief was helping us.
Yeah. So we did that, and then I wanted to go to college. I didn't want to have anything to do with the farm, to be honest. So I went to college, was going to go into art therapy. That's what I wanted to do, especially with the elderly. And then my husband was in the Marines, so I met him out in California. And he wanted to have kids. And I said, well, I'm not having kids in California, and then you're gonna be shipped here, there, everywhere, and I'm not gonna be by myself. Though I had a really great job out in California, I really liked the people out there, I loved California a lot. So I said, it's either we stay in the Marines when we don't have kids, or we go home and we have kids and our family's with us. And he's like, I think I wanna try the farm out. So we came home, we had kids, and the rest is kind of history with that. And we decided, like he said, there's been things, they tried the florist business. You always have to keep up with the times and with how things are changing. So they did try the florist business, my parents did, my Uncle Mark. That didn't pan out after a while once, you know, shopping centers like Shaw's and everything started carrying flowers. So we kind of had to merge out of that. Then we decided, after my husband's father passed away, he had left Chris some money, and he said, you know, use this money for something that you want, so we decided to add on the ice cream stand. So that was our endeavor that we used to put the ice cream stand on, and then, so we're just trucking along. Hunter is wanting to do what my dad did. He wants to come back and work here. We're trying to get him to maybe go away for a while, like my dad's dad said to him. Try out different things, and then if you want to come back, you can come back later. He's really adamant that he's staying here, he's not going to go anywhere else, so we're trying to push him to college, like, at least for a little while. Jackson, I think if he could go travel the world and never be here again. So, you know, it's all trial and error, it's hard work, takes a lot of time. We have to have other jobs because, you know, we just don't have a big area to make enough money to do it full-time and survive, so between Crotch Mountain and whatever odd jobs, we just make it work. So, but we like doing it, it's fun knowing everyone in our community, having such a great connection. I love all the people, you get to know everybody, even the summer people, you know, it's like when they come in the spring, it's like, oh, the summer people are here, you know, it's like, oh, how was your winter, how did everything go, and so, you know, as much as I hated coming back, I'm glad I'm back.
So that's why our uncle and I split up. He'd had it with rain
Right.
and everything else. We split up in 1993. I
So,
wanna show you- I wanna
But
show
even
you-
Amy didn't want to stay. She was like, sign me up for the Air Force, I'm out of here. So she went into the Air Force, and Ben's around, but, you know.
You think about how dry this summer was?
Mm.
This is 1975. We picked it in a rowboat.
Oh, my God.
Oh, you're in that picture, aren't you?
No, it's Sherry Cook.
Sherry.
The Sherry
she's
Cook
in
and
Oh, I'm
Peter.
sorry, yes, and Peter.
And Peter
And this, believe
Davidson.
it or not, was Columbus Day weekend.
Good.
It was the end of the year, so it didn't kill
That
us.
was right down by our house.
Oh,
Yeah,
was it?
down on Depot Street.
But Eric, in the spring, you've had Lake Tenney, haven't you? I've observed.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
But that's snow melt. It's when it hits from May to October that it kills us. March and early April, that's normal. Okay? But thank God for the river this year. A little water headed in it. We wouldn't have any corn or anything. It's just the reverse of this.
Well, even like with times have changed too, you know, this is our 11th year that we've had the Jamaicans come up. It doesn't seem like it's been 11 years, because they've been here since Jackson was 1, but, yeah, it's just people don't wanna do that kind of work anymore. And it's hard work, it takes a lot of time, but that's the kind of work that they love to do, and they love coming up here, they feel like this is their community, and they're great guys.
But Sarah and Ruth are here from back when we always had
Right, but it's not like that anymore.
teenagers, right, teenagers from the community for years and years. And you know what that was like, right? Hard work, Sarah?
Yeah, picking pumpkins was my favorite.
Yeah,
Picking
The
corn
peas
was
and the
nice.
rains on those buckets.
awful, 25 cents a quart,
Yeah.
that's what I used to get, 25 cents a quart, I'm like, are you kidding me?
I used to, when I was working for you, I don't know if we ever told you this, but Joe Riley and Donnie Boulay and I used to, when we picked corn, we'd throw them at each other out in the field.
They still do that. Yeah,
And we had the corn huskers motion, we'd do to
Oh,
each
yeah.
other. So,
No, but
it was fun.
our farm's no different than any other farm in the world. It's totally dependent on weather,
Yeah.
the long and the short. of it.
labor, huh?
That's when we trade, It was even worse in 2009, believe it or not. Not the depth of the water, but it was continuous, this deep. And it just killed us. But you live with it, and you figure out how to pay your bills and get through the next year, and then you have a good year.
But also, I wanted to let you know that I have my own little farm now. Not really, but I'm a teacher and my husband's a psychologist. But we live in Ware and we're up on Sugar Hill. We've planted an orchard since we've been there, since 1987. Pears, apples, peaches. We got one peach this year.
Yeah, see, but
Yeah, it was
this
the
year was
frost.
horrible,
Yeah. And
you know?
and we've been adding on, you know, as time goes by. And we also have a nice garden that really suffered this summer. But we are trying to teach our own children how you can grow your own things organically, pretty much, and have good, healthy food. And you taught me that. And you know, even when I got married and went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with my husband, we got a community plot in the Frick Cemetery. You know, when we think, oh, wow.
Right.
So, I mean, we've
Yeah.
both been gardening, and it is hard. And you do have to depend on the weather. And you do have hardships, too, like tomato hornworms that take over. But, and the vine borers that killed all my pumpkins, too. But, you know, it's really rewarding to get your hands in the soil.
Yeah.
And I wish more people would.
We
Well,
actually
and
have,
they're scientists too.
Ruth was an older member of it, but we only went to the Jamaicans 10 years ago because we had to.
Yeah.
So we had, how many years? 30-something years prior to that. We have quite an alumni club
Yeah.
that worked for us as high school kids.
I know, my son was there, yeah. He
There's a lot
just
of
remembers
people.
going
Some
up
of them
there
were
when
old
it
enough
was
to,
cold and he'd
Yeah.
find a warm place when the
Yeah.
sun was rising.
Yeah.
I'd
Right.
just sleep.
7 o'clock in the morning.
Especially in the pea patch.
Yeah.
I liked it when your dad was still alive because we'd have a whole hour off for lunch because he watched Jeopardy. I'd come from lunch and I go, oh, let's pretend he's watching Jeopardy. We can't go back until 1.
that's cute.
Mr. Edwards.
Anybody got any other questions?
I think it's just wonderful that the farms are continuing, and I know they're under pressure, and even in today's Sunday news, they'll talk about how the farmers have to diversify so much in order to survive and so forth. But as you look ahead to ensure that the farm continues for another 50 years, 100 years, what do you see as changes that you might have to do that they did differently in 1851 or even when Dad was doing it? What do you need to do?
Well, we've talked about it as well, and Chris and I have talked about it, expanding our farm stand. So not necessarily in Antrim, but having, exactly, branches other places, maybe Francis, you know, like over in Hillsborough, one in Peterborough maybe. But now that the boys are older, and if Hunter's really, really interested in doing that, that's something that we could tackle, but right now, it's just, there's not enough manpower to do that. So that's something that we're really looking at, because this area, Antrim is not that populated, and the Monadnock region, we need to like branch out more to get more people in. Because if you look at Lowell Farm, Brookdale, I mean, they have Hollis, they have Londonderry, I mean, they have a huge population, and they're busy all the time. I mean, constantly. So, but we're picking from a small area, so we need to,
We buy as much as we can.
I know.
Only if so much.
So, and that's the problem, we're just not in a big enough area.
Can you produce enough to expand?
We could, very easily, especially like corn, because corn is like our big seller. Tomatoes. We might downsize like stuff that we don't sell a lot of and just focus on stuff that we are really, really good at. We've talked about that. Maybe like we would buy in squash, like summer squash, zucchini, cucumbers, like the stuff that we're not making a lot of money on, but like corn, tomatoes.
Can you put your product in the stores or do you do that?
Well,
like
we've tried to go
Shaw's
through
or-
Shaw's,
Yeah.
but there's a whole corporate
Oh,
thing you have to go through.
yeah, okay.
You have to fill out paperwork, which we did, and then you have to go to this meeting, and then you have to go to another meeting. It's just very hard. I mean, we do Roy's Market, but again, that's another small business that's having hard times, and they're trying really, really hard to keep it local and keep open, and Rivermead, but they're not a business per se where they sell to other people. A lot go to Rivermead, Brady's, but we need to get out to customer, like have a bigger customer base.
Maggie's?
We've tried the Green Grocer. We tried Maggie's. But they want more organic. And though we're low pesticide use, they want totally organic, which we're not, so.
I'll tell you a story about organic. Rosalie has a stand in Peterborough, and for years, she sold one thing that wasn't organic.
Oh.
It was sweet corn.
Corn?
Yes. And the reason is, in this, my own experience with a customer once, wanted to know if we had organic vegetables. I said, no, we use integrated pest management, which means you just do it when you have to. You don't do it automatically.
Right.
And we have people, there's a tester that comes and tells us when he has this, that, and hey, you should, don't worry about it.
Yeah, she comes twice a week and she collects
Yeah.
bugs. So in each one of our fields, we have these little tents, like you might see them out in the field, there's little white tents. So she collects them and she gives us this is what you have, this is what the larvae is, this is what you need to get ready for, be prepared, in 2 weeks you're gonna have to spray, da-da-da-da-da. So she tells us from the extension, like, what we're gonna need, so.
The point is, this customer they were obviously in favor of not necessarily organic, but you just didn't use pesticides or anything. And I says, well, are you willing to buy corn with big worms in the end of it? Well, that's what Rosalie found out. Nobody's smart enough to do that. So she ended up getting regular corn. The rest of her stuff was organic, but not sweet corn. And that customer said, well, why don't you just grow it with no worms and don't tell me what you do about it? Men don't seem to get excited about earworms, and women do. And I can understand that. But that's why we do spray corn. Because the bulk of, I think, a lot of our customers are ladies.
But they fall off. It's just like the broccoli. I mean, there's little broccoli worms. But you put them in the heat, the little broccoli, I don't know what they're called. What are those little caterpillars called?
Oh, I forgot it.
I can't even remember, but as soon as you heat it up, they all just fall to the bottom of the pot anyway, so it's like, what a big
I used to have us soak them in a great big clawfoot tub.
Yes, which we
and
still
water
have.
upside down.
Yes.
So they would come out.
Yep.
The majority of them would.
Yeah.
And then if you got a little extra protein,
It's
there's
not a
no
big
extra
deal.
charge. Yes.
And if you have chickens, they love them.
Of course, you know the old saying, what's worse than finding a worm in your corn? Half a worm.
So, yeah.
Questions or comments?
Have you guys gone to year-round production of things yet?
No.
How far do you go?
Thanksgiving. And then we're done. And then we start back up in the end of February, we start greenhouses.
Of course,